What about the GCC? What does that look like in 5 years?
Right. So unfortunately, the biggest loser of this war, regardless of how it turns out, okay, even if Americans were to win, the biggest loser is the GCC. Because for the past 30, 40 years, the GCC is basically built on a mirage because it's essentially a desert with very little access to fresh water and very little agriculture. And so it couldn't really sustain a large population. But with the petrodollar and with American military protection, then the GCC nations felt free to invest in technology that allowed them to grow their population, right? So desalination plants, modern infrastructure. So you sort of saw this massive growth in Dubai, in Qatar, in Riyadh. And what this war has done is shattered this mirage and revealed the limitations of the GCC. So, for example, look at Dubai. So Dubai, for many years, has prided itself as this safe, very cosmopolitan, very open tax haven. So a lot of wealthy people immigrated to Dubai. But because of this war, and we're talking about like a few drones hitting hotels, it's really shattered the image of Dubai. And once you shatter this mirage, you can never, ever rebuild it again. So the idea of Dubai as like the future New York or London, the financial capital of the GCC, this mirage has evaporated.
Iran in 5 years?
So Iran is being devastated right now. So the Israelis and Americans are attacking critical infrastructure. So the Israelis attacked the largest gas field in Iran. The desalination plant was destroyed. But we also have to remember what is being hidden from us. And what's being hidden from us is the fact that the Israelis and Americans are trying to destroy the capacity of the state to govern the nation, basically destroy the state's monopoly on violence. And so what we're hearing are attacks on police officers, on military installations, and there's talk of special forces going into Iran and starting to fund dissident groups, right? Like the Kurds and the Palakis in southeast Iran. So no matter what happens in this war, it's going to be very hard for the government to maintain national control, even if they were to survive this war. And also another huge issue for Iran is that for the past few years, it suffered drought issues. So its agriculture was heavily impacted. They were actually talking about moving Tehran, like moving these millions of people out of the city of Tehran because the capital could no longer sustain this large population. So this war will only exacerbate these environmental issues, especially with the attacks on critical civilian infrastructure, for example, dams, reservoirs, desalination plants. And it's going to take years and years for Iran to recover from this war as a nation. And you have basically the stirring of ethnic settlements. You have the destruction of the state's capacity to deliver basic services. But the good news for Iran is that it seems as though they will be able to maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz. And that is critical because now they're able to charge a toll on anyone who uses the Strait of Hormuz. And they talk about 10%, which should generate about $800 billion a year annually for Iran. So the nation will be destroyed in this war, but if it's able to harness the pride of the Persian people, if it's able to unify the Persian people, and it's able to leverage the resource of the Strait of Hormuz effectively, then we can expect Iran to rise again in like 10 to 20 years' time.
Where is Israel in a few years from now?
So if you look at the main beneficiary of this war, it is Israel. Because Israel has an ambition called the Greater Israel Project, which is what they believe that their God, Yahweh, promised to their ancestor, Abraham. And so they believe that Yahweh promised Abraham all the land from the Nile in Egypt to Euphrates in
Yes.
Iraq. If you look at the entire map, it also extends to Anatolia, which is southern Turkey, and even into Saudi Arabia. So if you look at what's happening, well, it's convenient in that the GCC is being destroyed. Saudi Arabia will probably be drawn into this war. It is possible Turkey will be drawn into this war as well. And this war allows Israel to remake the Middle East in its own image. Also, if you think about it, according to game theory, the main constraint to Israel achieving the Greater Israel Project is actually not Iran, but America, because America guarantees the military safety and protection of the GCC, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, these nations. And so if Israel is become dominant, it's become the hegemon of the Middle East, it needs to figure out how to remove America from the equation. And quite honestly, this war has shown the limitations of American power. It's really annoyed the American people. The American people do not want this war. And American people don't even understand why America is still in the Middle East. And so it's very possible that regardless of what happens in this war, America is forced to withdraw from the Middle East, in which case Israel is able to achieve its Greater Israel Project.
It was clear to me that that was part of the motive, that Israel understood this and roped the United States into this war in order to get the United States out, in order to hurt the United States and get the United States out of the Middle East. Do you think that will be successful?
I think the way this war is going, this plan will work. And the reason why is the American military has not fought a real war for decades. 2003, this war in Iraq was not a real war because Saddam Hussein basically gave up. He didn't have air defense because those economic sanctions had destroyed his economy. And his logic was this: let the Americans invade. They can't possibly invade because if they destroy us, that would make Iran, which has hostilities against America, the regional power. So why would America do this? It is self-defeating. It is not logical. It is not rational. So I'm not worried about them attacking me. And he was surprised when they did attack because it was not logical. It was not rational. But they did attack. It was a cakewalk. It took about 2 weeks. America achieved air supremacy very quickly, and they rolled into Baghdad in very, very quickly and toppled the regime. So that was a very quick and easy war that fit the American military doctrine of shock and awe. Iran is completely different, and the American military does not want to fight this war because they've war gamed this countless times. And each war game, they discover that they lose because the American military, it's too bulky. It's not as nimble and resilient as the Iranian military. And we're seeing that play out right now where you have these devastating carriers, the Abraham Lincoln and the Gerald Ford, threatening Iran, but not actually doing anything because they're afraid of getting too close to the coast of Iran, because then they become susceptible to drone strikes as well as hypersonics. So the Iranians have been preparing this for 20 plus years. They know the entire American playbook, and they have the perfect strategy to counter the American playbook. So America will have a really tough time winning this war. The great problem, the big question now is, will America send in ground troops? Because once America sends in ground troops, then it becomes plot committed. It's mission creep, sunk cost fallacy. It'll be like Vietnam all over. So right now there's talk of 2,500 Marines who've coming in from Okinawa. They'll be in the Middle East in about 7 days' time. And the rumor is, and I don't know, but the rumor is the intention is for them to take Karg Island, which is the main oil depot for Iran. So Iran exports 9% of its oil from that facility, the island. And if the Marines were to take it, it would be great optics. Trump would look good on TV. It'd be a great boost for American morale. The problem is that you can take it, but you can't hold it because it's too close to Iranian coast, and the Iranians can attack with artillery, with drones. Okay, which means that you now have to take on the coast. You have to occupy the coast and create a forward operating base. But then you're exposed to the Zagros Mountains. right? Which means that you're now forced to occupy the mountains as well. So it's mission creep. It's exactly like Vietnam, where in 1965, 3,000 Marines went into Da Nang to occupy an air base. And like 4 or 5 years later, you have a 500,000 troops, right? So it started off as a very limited, self-defined mission, but then it just balloons. So America could find itself in the situation very quickly.
What happens to North America, United States, and I do want to include Mexico and Canada? We don't think a lot about those countries, but they're both massive land masses and they have big populations and they're our neighbors. And so if the world is reorienting, I think you need to think in terms of continents rather than just nation states. What does that look like in 3 or 4 years?
Right. So from a geopolitical perspective, if America is forced to retreat back into the Western Hemisphere, it needs to worry about resources. And so it is in the best interest of America to eventually take over and colonize both Canada and Mexico.
Yes.
Mexico for its labor supply, Canada for its resources. You know, That's Canada's probably the wealthiest country in the world.
I know.
And so from a geopolitical perspective, if the world is retreating into self-sufficiency, if there's mercantilism, if there's trade barriers, then America has absolutely no choice but to ensure its own supply networks. And that means eventually taking over Greenland, Canada, Mexico, Latin America, Cuba, Venezuela. So America doesn't really have much choice in this matter. At the same time, what we're seeing is that this war, as well as other events, are causing political fissures in America, especially between left and right. So witness what happened in Minneapolis in January, right? And so we can expect that as this war continues, and there's a strong possibility that Donald Trump will call up a national draft in order to ensure the manpower to fight this war, then you will have rioting in the streets, you have massive violence, in which case the National Guard is deployed. There's a plan to deploy the National Guard to all major American cities by April. And so, unfortunately, America is probably going to suffer many years of sectarian violence. Not a full-fledged civil war, but maybe something along the lines of the Troubles in Ireland. I'm not sure if you've seen this terrible movie called One Battle After Another. It's just a terrible movie, by the way, but it gives you insight into what a civil war might look like, where you have these insurgent groups fighting against the state. So yeah.
But you expect the United States to hang together as a coherent nation state?
Listen, Tucker, the United States is the greatest nation in the world. The people are open, generous, entrepreneurial, energetic. The resources of America are infinite. America is a continental fortress so that it's protected by 2 oceans. America doesn't have a peer competitor in North America and South America. And so, I mean, America, regardless of what happens, America will still come out doing pretty well just because of the pure energy and creativity of its people.